everyone, it's Ayrton here from Flipman Motorsport, and today's episode of Grassroots Racer, we're in local Bendigo again, interviewing a brilliant driver. He is a local boy, so we do love to support our locals here in Bendigo because there's lots of great talent in Bendigo, and unfortunately they don't get recognised as often. So we got Huey here. This is his car, so we'll be talking to him in a minute, and I really hope we can have a brilliant chat. Hi everyone, on this episode of Grassroots Racer, I'm here with Huey. So you've been racing for a long time now. How did you first get into motorsport?
My family's a racing family in speedway, so I got my first, what would have been called a street stock back in the day, but for a junior I was 11. So I got that for my 12th birthday, and started racing that and just putting around the speedway, and that was my introduction into racing. So,
and you said that was your introduction into racing. What sparked it for you? Was there something that caught your eye when you were little?
My mum's been taking me to speedway since I was in nappies, so it was, and my family's always been involved. I grew up in a small place up the Northern Territory called Tennant Creek. So my uncle raced, my dad raced, my brother raced, my cousins raced. The whole speedway was pretty much almost my family. So, and a couple of other families we all grew up with as kids. So, as long as I can remember, that was where we went on a Sunday until we put lights in, and then we went there on a Saturday night. So, always been around it, always wanted to do it. So, that was my introduction.
Yeah, and obviously at the minute you've got a pretty good rig. Was your first car a bit of a shitty one, or?
Yeah, my first one was a HR Holden. My dad ran it in street stocks before giving it to me. It was nothing flash. It was just an old 186 Holden. I think he brought the car to pull the 202 out to put in his work ute. Swapped the engines over and decided to put a roll cage in it, and we went racing. That was the 80s. That was a good days, so I suppose. But things were cheap to do and easy to do, and that's where I learned how to drive.
Yeah, and when do you think you sort of got your first bit of success? When did you first win do you remember your first race win?
My first race win, probably my first race win would have been, I was 16. I went up into the senior division. Got an opportunity to race my brother's Tirana, which any of the old folks would know back in the day. The little LJ Tirana was the car to have on speedway. Got my first feature win in that, in the seniors in that first year, and it was good. That was sort of gave me a bit of a taste for that we could actually steer a car. So then it gets worse from there. It's like a drug. It sucks you in. So.
Yeah. And did you ever win any state titles when you were younger, or?
I won 2 state titles when I raced compact speed cars in the Northern Territory. 1996 was my first one. 1997 I won that one as well. Finished second the following year, and DNF the year after that, which my dad actually won. So I won a couple of state titles in speedway. 2011 I debuted in a wingless up in Darwin and finished second. That's the bulk of my success. I've been in and out of racing over the years, so with family and stuff like that. So yeah.
I interviewed a fellow Todd Hobson. He raced wingless. They seem like a crazy category. What do you think of them?
Yeah, the wingless are an awesome concept. I got into the wingless because at the time you could buy a lot of old second-hand sprint car gear, buy an older chassis, just a wrecker motor, and away you go racing. And they are awesome to drive. They're a purpose-built race car, so the setup capabilities of them are awesome, and they're cheap to run. Like, you don't burn a lot of fuel. You don't. they're expensive to crash is the problem because they're still a sprint car. But so they are a really, really good category. They're actually surprisingly fast for just a silly little Commodore engine.
And did you ever find success in that? Because they obviously be a very competitive category.
Yeah, I didn't do too bad. I did finish second in 2011 at the NT title. Probably the best success I had in the wingless down here in Victoria. Tough place to race, Victoria, when it comes to speedway. I qualified fourth for the Victorian title in 2013. That's probably about the best result that I had in the wingless. Unfortunately, we bad choice of tyre and we ended up fading back through the field. But I mean, for what I was racing a 1996 low bar Schnee, which probably doesn't mean a great deal to yourself, but so in 2013 that's a pretty old car. And just pretty much everything second hand, $250 wrecker motor. So I was pretty happy to put it on fourth, qualify fourth for the feature. So little things like that sort of show that you've got a little bit of ability, and it keeps you driving down the line a little bit. So
yeah, and as a driver myself, I'm not a very good qualifier. Did you find yourself that in the heat races you did most of your dirty work, or did you do it in qualifying?
Well, with the wingless, basically our qualifying is our 3 heats leading into the feature, which sets up your lineup for the feature. So in terms of qualifying, my first heat's always probably been a bit of a dud. So you kind of sort of go in there with a basic setup, and you really need to get a lot of laps under you so you can read a track and start off quick. And even to this day now, I generally blow my first heat trying to work out things. So I'd have to say probably not the best qualifier, but the important part is the feature. Knowing that you've got a good car for the feature race. I'm capable of passing guys, so it don't bother me too much if I start a couple of rows back than I'd like. And
have you ever done anything huge, gone from 10th to 1st in a race, or any big comebacks?
I had a good run actually in the AMCA not long ago. Last year at Waganya, our last meeting of the year for AMCAs is the winter shootout, which we do it over the Queen's birthday weekend, and I got the opportunity last year to drive a late model Panther for Frank Thierry, who's one of our top Victorian competitors, Geelong Citrus Packers. I drove his car first time in a late model with all the bits and pieces. End up having a spin running fourth, probably about a couple of laps into the feature, so I got sent rear of field, and managed to come through from the rear and win that feature. So that was pretty. I was pretty pumped for that. So that was good. That's probably the last time I've done anything of any significance in that regard. So
and was Peter Welch commentating?
No, not out there.
Nah.
I actually can't remember who was commentating, but I've watched the video and I'm pretty excited about it too, I've got to say. Which is actually quite funny, but
I've seen some commentators, they get up from their seats and they get really excited. So you obviously
Welchie doesn't stand up much.
No. Welchie, he does a lot of talking. That's why he's a good commentator.
Yeah, Welchie likes to talk.
I hope he sees this. But obviously, doing something like that is pretty incredible. Do you think you had your mind switched on, you had good tyres, you had a good setup? Was it a bit of a combination?
Yeah, it was funny because it's not my car, and Frank's about a foot taller than I am, so I won't say I was overly comfortable in the car. Yeah. Maybe that helped. But it was the kind of track that it was was kind of grippy one end, but it was really, really slick and dry the other end. So it was two complete different tracks, and it just seemed to just suit me on the night. And you know, I guess there was no expectations of anything, so that always takes a little bit of pressure off the mind as well.
Yeah. And when you're on a surface that's clay mud, you obviously after a while they'll start ripping up the ground. Do you notice in longer races at the start the track might be really good and by the end of it it could be really bad, or opposite?
Yeah, speedway, and that's the benefit of speedway. It's, you know, it can change halfway through a feature race where you know, it'll, depending on what classes are running on the night, how much water or weather, the track will chop up, you know, through the feature where you might get a pothole that'll sort of just a rut that'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you hit that on the wrong angle and it'll unsettle the car, send you towards a wall, whatever. You know, they're the opportunities that you sort of look for as a car coming through the field. You know, the trick on dirt is to be able to either ride those ruts well and get your car to ride those ruts well, or be able to remember they're there and avoid them. Avoiding them is usually the best option, but sometimes they're in a spot where it's not really easy to go around. If the track's not wide enough for you to go around it, then you kind of got to get your car right to sort of go through it. Hit it at the right angle so you're driving through it, not hitting in it, and unsettling the car. We only run short races compared to Bitumen 2, I suppose. Our average feature's 20 laps. So you've got to get on it quick and move forward quick, and then you got to watch what the track's doing to try and sort of adjust your driving. If you miss the setup, you've got to adapt to the car. Yeah,
because if I was to spin from fourth on a road track that I do about Winton, we do about 134s if we're quick.
Yep.
So say you get spun off, you can make 2 seconds a lap on someone if you're really committed.
Yep.
Where on the dirt, one lap is 20 seconds, 30 seconds.
At Rushworth the other night, we were doing 18-second laps, top guys, high 17s. So you spin and you're a lap down, basically, just about.
Because if you do a full 180 to turn back around, by that time you've wasted 10 seconds.
Yeah, you know, and then you've got to sort of get back on the track, you know, in a safe manner as well. So your race is almost done if you have a spin. You know, if you spin and you're sort of on the track and you can't get the car moving, they'll call a yellow. That's the best thing for you. So, because at least that way you'll tag onto the back at the restart. Whereas if it stays green,
you got to let them all through.
They're all gone, and you got to chase, and that's real hard to come back from.
And one thing our whole family was confused about when we watched Speedway, what's with the redressing when the yellow comes out? So if I'm leading and I get punted off, when the yellow comes back, I can go back to the front.
If you're being punted off by the car behind you, you're not deemed the cause of the stoppage, therefore you get your position back. Yeah. So the only person penalised in most forms of speedway, the only person penalised is the guy that is at fault. If the stewards aren't sure who was at fault, they'll put everyone back in their spot, restart. Open wheelers that need to be pushed, they're a bit different. If you stop, you're rear field, no matter whether you're the cause or not. So if you need a push car, you're rear. With us, if you're not the primary cause, you'll go back in your position. They'll always go back one lap, completed lap. So you might see someone will pass the car in front of them, then the caution will come out, they'll have to go back because they didn't complete one full lap. So,
and one thing we're bringing in our racing is the receivers, which you guys have had for years. And you like it well?
The receivers are a must. As someone that's old enough to remember not racing with them and having to look at a board, I can honestly say the receivers make life so much easier. And there's a reason they're one way.
Yeah, just don't put them on full volume.
Yeah, full volume. So it's tricky because you get some stewards that you've got to have them turned up so you can hear them because You know, they're not. And then you have some that you got to have it almost down to 2 bars because they scream that much, and it scatters on your earphones, so you can't understand them.
Yeah, I remember the first time I did it, I was talking to a speedway guy the night before. He said put it on about 3 to 4 bars or something like that.
Yep.
I went out.
I find 3's not too bad.
I went out there and I'm on the track warming up, and I hear him.
Yeah.
Jumped in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can be very tricky.
Yeah. But, they're the little things that you sort of work out.
Although I do find that Formula V should be allowed to run radio communication. Only because we're very blind. We've got our little mirrors and that's about it. So, I'm not sure about you guys. You don't have any mirrors.
We're not allowed to run mirrors in Speedway, so...
Not even one at the top?
No.
Whoa.
So you're pretty much blind from your peripheral vision, and that's it. So,
do some categories allow spotters, I guess, with your wings or wingless? No?
No.
Ooh, that's tricky.
No. I'm not too sure on... I know in America they run spotters. I'm not too sure in Australia if it's... I don't believe that you're allowed to. So, no communication from outside the car at all.
I think in a big category like this, though, where you've sort of got your bars for protection, that's reasonable, but in an open wheeler in Speedway, it could be quite deadly.
And a lot of that just comes down to having the respect for the guy racing against you. There's times where people will push their way through and make a point of coming through. That can... our front wheels are open. So in our category, that can be a pain in the ass. So you're vulnerable there with your front end geometry. Like you still, if you've got to bang into someone to pass them, there wasn't any gap there to pass them.
Yeah.
So, and that's where you've got to mentally be strong too, and just wait for opportunities. I've got no issue with leaning. A little bit of a lean and a tap here and there just to, but flat out sort of barging through, that gets a little bit annoying.
And what about if they maybe don't brake as hard or they don't let off as much and they just sort of push you out a bit?
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things with dirt, I guess, is and Speedway in particular. Some guys will carry a lot of speed in to a corner. Some guys will jam on the brake and go in nice and slow. If you're not used to racing against those guys and you don't know they do that, it's quite easy to give it a little bit of a punt up the bum, and that sort of stuff. That's accidental. If you're doing that lap after lap, it's no longer accidental.
Yeah.
But I've run up behind people coming in too sort of quick. And just misjudged their speed because they've either got off the throttle or they've braked for the corner where I'm carrying a lot more speed in. Traditionally I've sort of done that, so guilty as charged. But you learn, again, it's about learning lap to lap. And
do the stewards ever do a redress with the receivers? Do they say, that was a bit unfair, maybe you should drop back?
You'll get quite a few stewards that will do it. With the rules with most Speedway categories is it'll be redressed at a caution. If there's a caution after something, you might get put back 2 spots, for example, if you've passed on the infield or if you've bashed your way through and the steward's seen that, they'll redress that, or at the end of the race they'll redress it. So,
That's fair enough. And with the infield, can sometimes it be used as an advantage to some people? Have you ever seen anyone purposely use it to try and gain an advantage?
Oh, there's plenty of people try to use it as a gain an advantage. Hence the reason why they these days they do have the tyres and whatnot on the infield to try and sort of stop people from cutting it. That's just an ongoing sort of thing. People will try and take any advantage they can.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky thing in Speedway. And we were talking about it on the radio the other night. What is your personal opinion about what should be put on the inside of the track, the pole line?
a big fan of what Moama, like we were talking the other night. Moama have put basically a big concrete sort of berm around that. You can put a wheel over if you want, but it's that high with low cars like this. You're just going to be scraping along the top, so it ends up slowing you more than it does give you any sort of real advantage. Darwin up in Northline Speedway, they have their infield raised, and then they've got basically speed humps around the corner. So again, you hit the bump, it unsettles the car. It's no advantage to try and sort of sneak that extra little foot in that sort of gets you that advantage. I'm definitely not a fan of tyres. I think they do more damage than they do good, and I think it's just a lazy way of doing it myself. But I don't own a track, so that's just my opinion. So I've also, I think I've seen tracks use the road bollards, the big orange road bollards full of water and stuff like that. That didn't go down well. I think someone hit one time and the water went out on the track, and then you had a big wet spot in the track. So I think that there are ways of doing it. Some tracks do it well, some tracks don't.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it not long ago. What about your outside walls? Do they ever pose danger where the gate can be sometimes, or are they well out of the way most of the time?
No, most of that's good. Speedway Australia are our governing body for the most part, and they do regular track inspections, and so you've got a track grading system as well, so for different classes to allow what classes you can run depending on your safety fence, catch fence, stuff like that. Tracks in Australia, I don't think there's too many around that have too many issues where the gate sticks out any real sort of distance that you can get caught on or anything. None of that really sort of exists to my knowledge anymore. Because
most of them don't really enter on the straights or nothing. They sort of enter either into the corner where you wouldn't most likely hit it, or on the exit.
They're all over the place, to be honest. There's no real set sort of standard for where a track puts a gate. I know I've raced on plenty that they're smack bang in the middle of the straight, and where I grew up, smack bang in the middle of the corner. So it's at the end of the day, it hurts no matter when you hit it. So that's all I can say on that.
So obviously Peter Welch would have more experience, but have you ever hit a wall hard?
Oh yeah. I've hit walls hard plenty of times. Some things just happen. So I've had a couple of head-ons where things just went badly. It's the beauty of the safety equipment that we have to use. It's definitely by far and over what we were running when we were a lot of years ago. So
well, you would have been a racer who raced with and without the Hans device.
Yep.
Big difference.
Yeah, the Hans device took a bit to get used to, I've got to admit, because your belts go over your Hans device. Open wheelers, you need... when I went into wingless, I had to run a head and neck device. So I went the Hans route myself. I found it comfortable enough in the wingless with the full containment seat and whatnot. But it's an eerie feeling because you don't feel your belts as you would traditionally feel your belts. So because you got your pad underneath the Hans device, it just feels like there's nothing on your shoulders. So it's a little bit nerving first few times, but once you get used to it, it's all right. So
I can definitely say the Hans device did me well. So it's a great tool that we've got. And after Dale Earnhardt's crash, it really changed the motorsport world. So the Hans device was definitely a great tool.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and the advancement of the head and neck devices now. The Simpson hybrid is a really good one. A lot of people are sort of going towards that these days. So so definitely, I'd recommend some sort of head and neck device to anyone, even if you don't have to wear it. I'd suggest wearing them.
Yeah. It was a bit like in go-karting. We used to have rib protectors at one point. It was an optional thing. And after a while, they made it mandatory because very dangerous without it.
Yep.
But, you know, it's one of them things that is very tricky. Safety in motorsport can sometimes people disagree with it because, it makes you slower, but sometimes it's necessary for your safety.
Yeah, as racers, we're our own worst enemy. I guess, you know, you look at the old advertising slogan for Bell helmets. If you've got a $50 head, wear a $50 helmet. But you know, it's something I've seen. I've been on the administration side of Speedway for a bit of time in my life as well. So you see guys, they'll spend thousands of dollars on shocks and on tyres and stuff like that, and then they'll whinge about, you know, spending $1,000 on a helmet that's going to keep them alive. So you know, like I say, we're our own worst enemy. Yeah.
Well, one thing, you know, even we're very budget as we race. So, but one thing we didn't go cheap on was my safety devices.
Yep.
It's just something that you need because, you know, you don't want to be in a scenario and need it and not have it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, you know, in simple terms, you can only go so fast in a wheelchair as well.
But yeah, we've established a lot with safety, and, you know, moving forward, you've had your fair share of experiences in the race car. You know, do you have a favourite moment, you know, while racing?
I just generally enjoy the camaraderie of in Speedway. I suppose it comes part of, I grew up around Speedway, and the families that were involved, we all sort of, it's a bit of a cliche, but it becomes your external family. So it's not just at Speedway. You find you end up spending time. You know, 9 times out of 10, especially if you're on a local track scenario. You know, you spend a lot of time sort of helping each other out, building cars, fixing cars, you know, sign writing cars, whatever you do. You know, the social side of it is probably something that I really enjoy, especially as I get older. I don't mind a beer. You know, so a bit of a sausage and a beer afterwards to catch up and talk a bit of crap and shoulda, woulda, coulda, all those sorts of things. So we've all got a story. So to me, it's, you know, I've enjoyed being down here in Victoria. So not having a local track, so we're a travelling class around Victoria, so enjoy going to the different tracks and stuff like that. Whereas where I come from, travelling to another track was a 500k or 1000k time to sort of get there. You know, like there's big distance between. So yeah, but you know, the whole environment is what I enjoy.
Have you got a name for it?
Nah, it's just the old girl really. So no real sort of names. So not something that I ever really got into. Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at the front here. So what sort of suspension are we running at the front here?
So it's just a coil-over shock, basically a standard sort of gas shock, coil-over on top. Just we run them on the front. We've cut all the buckets out that we used to run, and they used to have a weight jacker in there for your standard spring location. We've upgraded this that just gives the front end a little bit more softness and helps drive the car into the corner a lot better.
Yeah.
So.
And this would be a crucial thing to have while you're racing. Would you have one side a bit softer to the other because of how you want the car to sit?
Yeah, so we only run one way, so generally you'll run a little bit stiffer on the outside than what you will on the inside. So when you come into the corner, your inside front will just sort of dip and just sort of drag you through a bit better. Run an easy up, what they call an easy up shock on this corner. So when you come off the corner, transfers your weight to your left rear quicker, so that gets you off the corner faster. A few little things like that.
Yeah, and why do we only have 3 calipers and not one here?
Yeah, so because we only run one way, we're allowed to drop our right front brake. So you can either have a tap inside, so you just turn the right front off, or you can delete the brake altogether. I don't run one at all because I just don't really see the point. We have a brake bias, so you can wind front to back with your bias. So when the track conditions change, if on a wetter track, you probably want more rear braking than what you do on your front. And it essentially helps you go through the corner with your left front brake. So you can ride the brake slightly and it'll just pull the front of the car around. And it just sort of helps steer the car into the corner a bit quicker and stuff like that. So when you jam on them, it essentially throws the car sideways. So it's you're not driving straight into someone if they've spun in front of you and stuff like that. So side contact rather than straight into them.
Yeah. And, your car is obviously, everyone's car's a bit different.
Yep.
So I've noticed you got your transponder or your Dorian point there. Is that as far forward as you can put it, or?
Yeah, so with us, we're basically, where I have my transponder is where most people run them. So we sort of run them within a short distance of where they are. Mine just sort of sits there on the engine mount nicely, as opposed to trying to get it in onto the front clip. So, so that's pretty much where everyone runs them, either side, as long as it's roughly around about that area.
Yeah. So, doesn't matter if their car's a bit longer, as long as your transponder gets first?
Yeah, which is the theory of, with your front distance of where it sort of does sit. They try to keep them in a very similar sort of spot. So for that reason, we're probably not like road racing where you're talking milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, and you've got your engine in here. It's just an old Commodore engine.
Yeah, just a 2253. We're allowed to run a crate 350, the 602 crate motor as well. I don't have those finances, so I've just got a little clunker. Just an old Holden 253 and goes well.
Have you done any engine modifications to it? Just rebuilds or?
I actually brought that engine off a guy that sat on his pallet rack. It's an old AMCA motor that was a good motor. It was his spare engine. We brought that when I destroyed an engine. So that was just to keep us on the track. And it's turned out to be a real pearler. It's got to need a rebuild at the end of the year for a timing chain, but otherwise it goes all right.
Yeah, so obviously this class is designed for more of a driver skill point than just, all the money can buy you everything. So.
Yep. Yeah, we run a control tyre on all four corners of the car, the exact same tyre, and they're the hardest compound that you can get in an American racer. An 8-inch wide, 15-inch tyre, so a 15-inch rim. So. That's a little bit of a handy sort of leveller. You can only get so much horsepower down onto a hard tyre, and everyone's buying the same tyre, same price. It's good.
And we just have a quick look here in the cockpit. How do you feel sitting on the left-hand side when you drive on the right normally in your road car?
For the first time, it's a little bit to get used to being on the left-hand side, but it's a lot more comfortable, to be honest, to be running on the inside. And obviously for weight of the car, you want a bit of weight on the inside, so that sort of locks that side of the car down a bit, and just helps with the handling. It's good. I don't mind it at all.
Okay, so what about your gears? Do you have a sequential gearbox or a H pattern?
We essentially run a quick change diff. So if you have a look at the back, essentially you got the back hat there where you can see the filler tube comes into. That comes off. Change your ratio into whatever you want. So, and you can basically go up 150, 125 revs per gear set, roughly is what it's meant to be. But So you just change the back of that, and that's so we run on a race. We basically run in top gear. So whether it's 4-speed, 3-speed, run in your top gear. So it's direct drive. So that just has eliminated of what we used to run the ball warners, and guys used to run in second gear and stuff like that. So it was hard on the gearboxes, and quite often you'd see gearboxes blown and stuff like that. The quick changes eliminated a lot of that sort of issue. So, and it just makes it so much easier rather than changing an entire diff to change your ratio. You just pull the hat off, so you can do that in between races. Takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's good.
Much better.
Well, jobs have always got a good estimate, but it takes a bit longer to do them.
Well, it depends on how I mean, my diff's a bit of an older one, so it does take probably 10 minutes to do, but the later model ones come off so much easier, and it's a lot more variance in terms of fine tuning your gear ratios to the track conditions. That's the thing with speedway. You will do a meeting at Rushworth, for example, at the start of the year, where it's sort of warming up a bit, so the track will be a bit dry, a bit slicker. So you'll run a different gear set to what you will at the end of the year, where it's cold and the moisture's up and the track's racy. Same with Ballarat. I had that in the wingless, so used to run it 2 different times a year. So we'd run a different gear set for each meeting. So it pays to take good notes as to what the date and weather's like. So
yeah, and I know you run a leaf spring rear end here. Did some guys run a coilover?
Yep. So a few of the top guys now with the latest specs that we're allowed to run, single leaf with coilover rear suspension, and what they call a pull bar, or biscuit bar. And that's just a bar that runs from the top of your diff. It joins down onto your chassis, and it just locks the wheels down into the ground a bit better. That helps on slick tracks and stuff like that. So, but we go all right with the old traditional rear end. So,
well, as long as it works for you.
Yeah, it works for me. It's this is an older car. I think this car's probably built in 2004. Which is another advantage to the class. You don't have to have the latest and greatest to have a bit of fun or be competitive. So this car sits quite nice. It's very comfortable to drive. So
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you showing us your car. It looks beautiful. When it's not
clean.
Yeah, when it's clean, and when it hasn't got dents in the side of it, which in speedway it happens a lot. It can be very unfortunate. You can hit people because on the mud you don't stop as quick as what we can on asphalt. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, well, they only have to look good from 20 metres or so.
You only got to look at the top. That always looks clean.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's crucial to have a good looking car, and obviously it does look good. I love the wrap on it. What was the inspiration behind it?
Well, I've pretty much ran with pink since I was 12 years old, just about. So it's sort of kind of become our colour. We went predominantly white this year because there's a lot of black cars at the moment. So it was just a design I found and played around with, and liked it. So we put it on.
And last question, your number 12, what's the significance behind that?
Number 12, well, has a couple of significances. At the time when I started racing, obviously I was 12 years old when I started racing. My dad at the time was racing, he was number 13, and my uncle was also racing, he was number 11. So it was... my birthday is the 12th of the 12th, so it's sort of kind of all lined up where number 12 was it. And I've actually only just got number 12 back for this year in AMCAs. So, so it's not a lucky number because it's I've had a lot of accidents and stuff like that over the years with it. So, but I've had a lot of success with it as well. So I'm not really suspicious on numbers. Numbers are number. I've won races in all sorts of different things with different numbers. But I guess when you have something for so long, 20 odd years of racing over the years with different classes and different categories, and it's always been there with me. So to be able to get it back after a while has been good.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you showing us your car, and good luck for your next race.
No dramas. Thank you very much.